Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle from WeAreSC.com. We have the whole crew with us this week, and we're all going to get along this week. I can almost guarantee it. Last week, we argued a little bit. It was good. There were two reasonable points of view. We try to express them as best we can. That's not where we are this week. Let me tell you what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about USC Notre Dame. I know we've talked about it before, but what we have hinted at or talked about being a possibility is coming closer and closer to being a reality. It appears it's breaking in the national news. We're going to talk about it, and this is something that, frankly, USC fans need to be talking about more than they are. We'll do a little bit of a recruiting update, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about some of the Big Ten programs and Big Ten stadiums if we have enough time, just for fun. Okay, guys. We've been talking for some time about the possibility that USC will not continue to the Notre Dame series. We've seen odd statements from Lincoln Riley, from Jen Cohen. We've seen what I think are trial balloons over the course of many months. And now the national news is breaking stories that Notre Dame wants a long-term contract, USC is not sold on it, and the two schools are trying to work something out. Don't know what they're talking about, but that's where we are. The four of us have already gone on record saying that USC and Notre Dame need to play each other every year, right? And I'm sure we'll repeat that today. What I want to start out with is I want to start off with some of the underlying factors that should go into consideration when you're making a decision like this. And I want to start with this. Should the primary goal of USC's schedule be to make it easier to win a national title? This seems to be the primary argument that people are suggesting, those of us who don't want the series to end, that we're missing. My question for you guys is, does that make sense? Should the primary goal of a schedule be to win a national title? Whatever that schedule looks like is okay, as long as it gets us closer to that goal. Eric, you just shut off your microphone, which means you're ready to talk. Let's go.
No. I if it's black and white, no. Like I get it. It should come into play, right? How do we set up to uh be in the playoff, win a national championship, all of that kind of stuff. I don't think that dumbing it down as much as possible in the things that you can control is the best way to win a national championship. So I guess that's where I differ. Like I think playing a tough non-conference game is the best way to set yourself up to win a national championship. I think you need as many shots at really good teams to get yourself ready as possible. So in it's kind of two ways because I think the assumption is to win a national championship, you need to play the easiest schedule possible. I guess I disagree with that. And so I do think that if you're trying to win one, you need to play some teams. Like you can't I don't think every single year you can play just three garbage non-conference teams and be ready to go.
Mark, thoughts on this?
So this is why you're such a great attorney, Chris. You kind of
Thanks, Mark.
you kind of shift the goalpost just a little bit. The primary goal of any season is to win a championship. You hear how I said season, not schedule. The schedule is just kind of part of getting to that end result. USC has always prided itself. Fans have always prided itself on how tough a schedule USC plays. Anyone, anytime, any place. I mean, that's why they scheduled Notre Dame. That's why they kept it a part of this, of their tradition, of their history for nearly 100 years. All of a sudden, that doesn't matter anymore because there's a playoff structure involved. You would have thought this argument would have made more sense when it was being done with polls, people voting, BCS computers figuring it out. Instead, it's gone reverse. People are like, no, we gotta level down. We gotta make it the easiest path forward. When did that come into effect? We You want the best players so you can be the best team, but you want to beat up on a bunch of teams that you should beat with halfway decent players? None of this really makes sense. So no, it uh, the primary goal is to win a national championship at the end of the season. But if you say, well, the only way we can do it is if we, play the easiest teams possible, what's the value in that?
Greg, if you're the athletic director at USC, what are you taking into account when you set your schedule? Are you thinking only about getting as many W's as you can, or are there other things that matter to you?
Well, I think if you use basketball, which I think people should really look at with the NCAA tournament, about what as they increase the number of teams, how did that change people's outlook? Winning the conference wasn't such a big deal. It was getting in the tournament. And that became a way of life and is still today. I think USC fans, as we really start to embark on a real playoff, and I think it should be 16 teams, no question. I've been writing about this since they started expanding it. It's really going to get down to, are you one of the 16 teams? And what are you going to remember about this particular season? You're going to remember what it was at the end of the year when they add up all the wins and losses. And are you going to the playoffs? USC has it in them to win national championships. That is the expectation. It shouldn't be dumbed down. It shouldn't be, well, if we get to the playoffs, let me tell you what's going to happen. If SC gets in the playoffs, everyone's going to be excited. And if they lose, then people are going to say, yeah, but we lost the first game. Or if they win, they'll say, well, we better win the second game. And it's going to end up being just like the NCAA tournament. How far did you go the following year? And for me, USC needs to be, first of all, Los Angeles does not want to see SC play Clay Helton's team. I'm sorry, they don't. It's an amusement, okay? But what's it going to prove? As far as Lincoln Riley, I could care less. The Lincoln Riley says, okay, I'm okay with, Utah, Missouri, Southwest Missouri, whatever the case may be. Look at he's short term. All head coaches are short term. I mean, even look at Nick Saban. He was long term, short term, and then they have to get back to the reality. The reality is if you want people to follow USC, you have to bring people to the Coliseum to make it important. Example, I'm sorry to disappoint people, but when McKay was the head coach at USC, you could always figure they're going to play one or two really good preseason teams at the time. They're going to play Oklahoma. They're going to play somebody else. And even when Carroll was here, they went to Arkansas. They went and they played Auburn. I mean, he didn't dodge anything. And you know what? That attitude definitely infected his team in a positive way. They said, bring on anybody, any place, anywhere. To me, Lincoln Riley, he's just not a USC type of mentality in terms of we'll take on the best September or November. Now, he may be right. He may be right in how he's looking at it. I could be right and say all people are going to care about is who are the 16 teams in the playoffs. And if SC isn't one of them, I'm going to say, why not? And in Lincoln Riley's case, they're not paying you $110 million, whatever it is, to not make the playoffs. That's ridiculous. I was just reading the other day, and I'm sure many of our followers here, viewers, how much money Lincoln Riley makes compared to the president of USC, Folt. Now, whether you like Folt or not, it's okay. Dislike her, okay, you like her or whatever. But the idea is the head football coach at USC is getting paid more money than anybody, which is fine, but you have to show something. You have to get in the playoffs. You cannot sit there and say, well, we started off 3-0. We really started off hot. People like Mark Culkin, Eric McKinney, Chris Arledge, all the other professionals, we know who they're playing, and we know how good whoever they're playing. It'll be fun the first two games. The first game will be fun no matter who they play because it's the first game. And the second game will be amusing because it's Clay Helton. But in the end, we're all going to look back at the games that USC played this season in the Big Ten. And if they don't get in the playoffs, now we're going into the fifth year under Lincoln Riley. and still no playoffs. And you know what? He's had enough time to stock the foundations of his program. And I don't think we can argue that so far it's not been as successful as probably Lincoln Riley wants it to be. But, like anything else, time marches on. And time is going to march on to when people are saying, did we make the playoffs? Then it's going to be, how far did we go in the playoffs? Then it's going to be, what's it going to take to get to the championship game? What's it going to take to win it? And everything's going to focus on the playoffs. It just is.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's as the playoff is expanding, now 12, soon, it's almost certain that it'll be 16 at some point soon, right? We already know that. It's interesting that as the playoffs are expanding, that USC is now deciding to water down its schedule. The Big Ten and the SEC are both going to have, in the next deal, either 3 or probably 4 automatic bids. You have to be in the top 3 or 4 of your conference to get in the playoff. That means that the non-conference schedule doesn't even matter for getting in. But by the way, since when is being in the top 3 or 4 of your conference, one, a goal at USC, and number 2, something that you're so worried about that you have to lose the most important traditions you have? That's who we are now.
Well, Chris, just let me point out something I think is important, although it's not football, it's basketball. Enfield was at USC, and Mark, Eric will probably be able to be more specific than I am. 10 years he was at SC, correct? Something in that longevity. Okay, did he go to the playoffs? Yes, he went to the playoffs on occasion. But in 10 years, did he ever win the conference? And did anybody care? Or did people only care that they went to the tournament? And how far could they go in the tournament? And winning the conference, to me, is still a big deal. Okay, it's still a big deal. But it became less of a big deal compared to, did you get in the tournament and how far did you go? And
Greg, start with
Mark, let me finish.
Mark, let me finish. The Andy Enfield era. I agree with you. It didn't start with the Andy Enfield era. That started way back when the NCAA tournament expanded. Just get into the tournament. So you can point to the Andy Enfield era. You've made the point. We agree.
I certainly hope so.
So again, it's nothing to do with Andy Enfield. Basketball and football are completely
no, they're not completely different at this point.
Really
and I'll tell you why, Mark, you are wrong. The reason there's not different is because everyone looks at the playoffs. That's what it gets down to. It gets down to the playoffs. Did you get in, and how far did you go? And you could come in third place in the old Pac-10, and if you could get to the quarterfinals or the semifinals, considering your past, it could be a successful season at that point. But every time you go successful, people are going to want more success, which is fine. It should be that way. And I hope that SC can get in as quickly as possible for a lot of reasons into the playoffs. I don't know whether they can do it this year. I hope they can do it this year, but it's going to be a real important point, especially after this year.
In basketball, if you have a crappy out-of-conference schedule, you're not getting into the tournament. So again, Greg, don't compare football and basketball.
Excuse me, you can have a crappy non-conference schedule. And how many wins did Andy Enfield have?
The rules of getting into the playoffs in basketball are different.
It's chill pill. This is ridiculous. The bottom line is it gets down, Mark, I'm sorry. It gets down to how far did you go in the tournament? The first thing is you got to get into the tournament. That's number one. If they don't get into the football tournament this year, I would understand it. But the window of opportunity because of recruiting is going to be, look, they keep saying they're going to the playoffs and they haven't gone. It's the 5th year. So it is important to try to get to the playoffs as quickly as they can.
Well, look, I'll say this, that if you expand to 16 teams, then not getting in the playoff is a pretty spectacular failure for USC, right? Or Alabama or Texas or any of these other programs. Top 16. Right. I don't know that I would consider getting into the top 16 to be a remarkable success if I'm one of the blue blood programs, but certainly not doing it's a failure. There was a time when college football had no postseason and we fought over the national championship the national champions all the time, but it had by far the best regular season in sport, right? Every single game mattered. One bad half of football, we can think of a bunch in USC's history, but one bad half of football in 2008 in September in Corvallis, Oregon, can completely derail what should be a national championship team. That's gone with a 16-team playoff. A lot's gone. The Rose Bowl no longer matters, right? We don't play Cal. We don't play Stanford. Nebraska and Oklahoma don't play. The regular season isn't what it once was. Here's my question for you guys. Are there any traditions in college football that should be sacred? I didn't say are sacred, because the people that run major college football programs seem to care only about making more money and making their jobs easier. And that's not just USC, that's all over the place. My question for you guys, is there any tradition that's so important that you would say, I would rather risk missing the playoffs some years because this tradition is so important? And is Notre Dame USC one of them? Eric.
I would push for every single thing that USC can do to play Notre Dame every single year. And I don't want to hear like, oh, Notre Dame can do whatever it wants and USC has to give in to all the demands and all that stuff. No, if USC wants to play in game one to keep it going, that'd be fine. That'd be fine. If they want to lead it off, like I would push for them to do every single thing that they can do. They didn't play in 2020, which was weird. You know, the whole season was weird, so it's tough to say like what a full season feels like without playing Notre Dame. 10 years down the road, yeah, you'd adjust. But like I don't want to get there. I don't want to get 10 years down the road. Like every season feels fun when you've got Notre Dame on the schedule and you can go beat them. Like as a college football fan, as a USC fan, the things that make rooting for USC different than rooting for Tennessee or rooting for South Carolina or Michigan State or whatever is a lot of why you're a USC fan. And getting the chance to beat Notre Dame every single year is not a majority of it, but it's not a tiny part of it. Like it's enough for me to say, yeah, that's worth really fighting for keeping that.
You know, I'll say this. If SC and Notre Dame, UCLA, it all becomes just a part of a schedule if all the focus is on getting to the playoffs. Because, you know, what are you going to sit there and say? Well, we beat Notre Dame and we beat UCLA, and someone will say, yeah, but you didn't go to the playoffs, did you? And that's where the heavy emphasis is going to be is, did you get in the playoffs? Again, how far did you go? And you know what? The Rose Bowl is never going to be a problem in my perspective because it's an event. It's a parade in the morning. It's everything. It's just not a game. It's an event. You know, the playoffs here will become an event. The more games, in my opinion, if you can get in the playoffs and host a playoff game in the first round or whatever, it becomes a big deal. If SC is hosting a first round game in the Coliseum, let's say against, just for the sake of argument, Alabama, that'll be a big deal. That will be a big deal because it's the playoffs and it's in LA, and LA likes big events. And I think if SC is part of the big events, it's going to be good for them. But are you really going to care about SC Notre Dame 10 years from now if all you're looking at is trying to get in the playoffs? You know, it'll come down to, yeah, we got in the playoffs and we even beat Notre Dame and UCLA. That's how it's going to be. And you see it in basketball. You see it how it is. Everything's going to focus on those 3 weeks of the playoffs.
Yeah, that may be right. I'll say this, though. The Rose Bowl's not the same now. We all know that. It's not the same. They still have a parade. But it used to be that USC would tell, they still do. You go to the stadium, you see Rose Bowl, right? The Rose Bowl victories, right? Written up on. Rose Bowl's a game that Boise State probably play in going forward, right? I mean, the Rose Bowl is a game that the number 4 seed from the SEC is going to be in. It's not the same. Now, I'm not suggesting that we have to have the old system. All I'm saying is that one of the things that make college football great is its traditions, and programs like USC and Notre Dame and Alabama and the other longtime powers. They have traditions that are very important to their fans, and we seem to be throwing them overboard at a rapid speed right now. And I just wonder, with all the other changes in college football, how much can they do that before college football fans start to look around and say, I used to love this game. So Eric mentioned one of the things that's being thrown around is maybe they play in the opener instead. Mark and Greg, thoughts on that? Is USC Notre Dame on September 1st? Is that good enough? Or is that I mean, it's not the same, but are you okay with that?
If my option is play Notre Dame game 1 of the season or don't play Notre Dame at all, sign me up for 100 degrees in LA on, Labor Day weekend. Yeah, I mean, there has to be some sort of compromise if you want to save the traditions. USC has never had a problem winning the national championship with a tough schedule, with Notre Dame on the schedule, with fewer opportunities to win a national championship because there wasn't a playoff field. As you pointed out, there is zero reason to eliminate this game because, number one, it doesn't affect the conference. It still gives you the chance to get into the top 4 spots in the conference, to be in the playoffs, to see how far you can go without having to say, well, you know what, we got there and we beat Missouri State and we beat Clay Helton, and you know what, we didn't need Notre Dame, we beat Sacramento State instead.
You know who this game does matter to in terms of making it into the playoff? Notre Dame. Right? If the playoff goes the way we're looking, USC is going to have its conference record, and whether it finishes in the top 3 or 4 in the conference, it's the only thing that decides whether it goes to the playoff. USC can lose to Notre Dame. It probably doesn't affect that. Notre Dame losing to USC probably does affect whether they get into the playoffs some of these years, which is pretty great. Look, the only thing better than beating Notre Dame in order to put yourself in national championship contention is destroying their hopes by beating them and keeping them out, right? That's fantastic. I don't want to give that up. Why am I giving that up? So we can play Missouri State. How about this? One of the arguments is, well, look, Notre Dame has an unfair advantage. They're an independent. Notre Dame should join the Big Ten. If Notre Dame joins the Big Ten, then they're in our conference and we can play. Here's my question for the people who are saying that. If Notre Dame's in the conference, then winning or losing that game actually does impact whether you're going to make the playoff. So having them in the conference takes the game from one that is about tradition and playing your biggest rival and turns it into a game where this may knock you out of the number 3 or 4 spot if you lose. So I'm not sure how that actually is an argument in favor of the policy. If they join the Big Ten, then all of a sudden it makes it more likely that they knock you out of the playoffs and less. And on top of that, do we think that Lincoln Riley and Jen Cohen and Chad Bowden are going to say, make them one of our protected games? Because I don't know that they would. If they want to drop them, then I don't think they're going to say that either. I think they're going to say, put them in the rotation like Ohio State and Penn State. Does anybody disagree with that?
No, because you have them as a protected game right now that, like we've said, shouldn't hurt you in the chase for the playoff. So you have what should amount to like a free game against them right now that can help you a whole lot. Because look, Notre Dame almost every year doesn't deserve the hype that they get and the bounce that other teams get from beating them. Like USC has benefited in a major way from its wins against Notre Dame. A major way. Because I mean, I talked about it in that story. Does USC win half of its Heisman trophies if Notre Dame isn't the team that its players are doing that against in those games? Maybe, but maybe not. Like Carson Palmer against them did that. Caleb Williams against them. I think that's the push that he needed. Matt Leinart too. Like you can go back to all of them. And it's games against Notre Dame that did that. Now, I know we're not talking about specific individual awards, talking about teams and getting to the playoff and all that kind of stuff. But Notre Dame gives you a bump that they shouldn't most years because they're not as good as if they run off to an 8-0 start, they get elevated to this unbelievable team and they might be pretty good. But I do think that USC right now is set up well to play them, where you get a win and you get a big bounce. And if you lose by a lot, then you're not a playoff team. You're not a team that's going to win. So that's kind of where I am with that, where all of a sudden, if they're knocking you down to 5 in the Big Ten or 4 and you get a bad draw or whatever, I don't know if you want to set that up. I think a lot of that too is like Notre Dame gets to keep all the money and it's unfair that they get, I don't know, whatever. If you're USC, it's never bothered you what other programs do, right? If Oregon is recruiting well, if Washington is recruiting well, if those schools are winning in the Pac-12, the Pac-10, go back, whatever, it's because USC is not doing things correctly, right? You talked about, do you set the schedule up to win a national championship? You set your roster up to win a national championship. Like that's it. That's it. Have a roster to win a national championship and then go beat a bunch of good teams and win a national championship.
Perfect segue.
No, I think, go ahead, Mark.
Perfect segue. You set your roster up. Here's another factor. And Chris, I think we were going to talk about this anyways. If you're going to ask your alumni, your wealthy donors, to chip in for NIL to get the best players, you're going to ask those same people to pay money to watch them beat up on Missouri State, Georgia Southern. Doesn't work that way.
Well, I tell you one thing I think it's been lost in this conversation, although all the points are really good. You know, Notre Dame right now wants to play SC every year, according to specific reports from authoritative people. SC says, well, we'll go one more year. Look, at one of the biggest recruiting factors for Notre Dame in Los Angeles is coming out here every other year and showcasing it. One of the biggest recruiting factors for Notre Dame is SC going back to Notre Dame. It's such a big deal. It is an event. But the point is, if Notre Dame gets taken out of SC's schedule, it's going to affect Notre Dame at some level. I'm not going to say it's the killer, but at some level, Notre Dame not coming in here for a while is going to be, well, it used to be a great rivalry. Maybe hopefully we can play them sometime in the future. But Notre Dame, in no way being an independent, wants to not come to LA. One of the reasons they would go to San Francisco to play Stanford was to get in the Northern California and showcase recruiting. So, in my opinion, there is no way that Notre Dame wants to see this rivalry go because it's such an important recruiting thing for them.
Yeah, I'm sure that's right. Notre Dame will probably come play a neutral site game in Los Angeles if this one goes away. They're playing neutral site games all over the place anyway. They hardly ever play an actual road game now, except when they.
I mean, what if that, right? What if Notre Dame and Michigan or whatever play? Or I mean, I guess it wouldn't make sense for them. They'd want to play back there. But Notre Dame sets up a big SoFi neutral site game every other year or something like that, and they're still playing in LA against a big time team and bringing recruits and still getting their LA thing.
Let's
it'd
play.
Be an idea.
Let's play Harry Carey. USC drops Notre Dame. UCLA steps into that void. How does that feel, USC fan? You ready for that one?
I mean, that's always fun to root for two teams to lose in the same game, but then frustrating when it doesn't happen.
Yeah, they had that. Notre Dame and UCLA played some years ago, right? That home and away when one of those years, both of those teams were horrific, like two of the worst UCLA and Notre Dame teams I'd ever seen, and it was funny to watch. All right. It used to be that Greg would let me go off on a rant in every episode of this.
I would let you.
Yeah, you would invite me to do it, and
of course.
So I'm going to exercise my prerogative to do so today because I'm unhappy about this, and I think USC fans should be, and they need to be talking about it. I was a sophomore in high school in 1988. That was the first year I got to see USC chase a national championship. They beat top 5 Oklahoma early in the year. They beat a top 5 UCLA team led by Troy Aikman late in the year. They had beaten a ranked Oregon team. They'd beaten a ranked Washington team. We did play hard schedules in those days. And everything rested on that final game against the Irish. Undefeated number 2 USC, undefeated number 1 Notre Dame. That loss was maybe the single most disappointing loss I've ever seen. It may still be worse for me than the Texas Rose Bowl. By the time the Texas Rose Bowl came around, I had seen national championships, and I was a little bit older and I had more perspective on the world. But as a high school sophomore, that game was absolutely brutal against Notre Dame. Yet not once did I think, I wish USC had played Missouri State instead of Notre Dame. That way Larry Smith would have an easier path to the title. Not once have I thought that in the 30-something years since. USC Notre Dame is arguably the greatest college football rivalry of all time and one of college football's greatest tradition. Those teams have combined for more national championships, more Heisman trophies, more All-Americans, more overall number 1 draft picks, more NFL Hall of Famers than any other rivalry. The names are legendary. Newt Rockne, John McKay, Marcus Allen, Joe Montana, Junior Seau, Tim Brown, Ronnie Lott, Eric Parsegian, Pete Carroll, and I'm leaving off a bunch of All-Americans and a bunch of NFL Hall of Famers because I don't have time to list them all. It's that kind of rivalry. This is not Oregon State. We're talking about USC Notre Dame. This rivalry started 99 years ago, and USC fans, unless you make yourselves heard soon, it may not last much longer. For years, USC would always hire incestuously because we always heard, we want somebody who gets USC. Oftentimes that turned out badly. I criticize that approach. Turns out hiring outsiders also has its downside. I was there in 1996 when USC broke that long streak to Notre Dame. I was there in 2005 when Bush pushed Matt into the end zone. I've been to 27 USC Notre Dame games. Some of you have been to more. I'll go to 27 more if given the chance. USC Notre Dame is my favorite game of the year every year. It might be my favorite day of the year. Athletic directors, GMs, coaches, they come and go. I understand they're all more important to the program than any individual fan. They decide wins and losses. They decide championships. I don't. But the program doesn't really belong to them. They're entrusted with it for a short time, and they're paid handsomely for what they do. But it's not theirs. The tradition they've been entrusted with does not belong to them. They're trustees. They're supposed to care for it and to return it better off than when they found it. That's their job. And I'm wondering now whether the people in charge of USC really understand the tradition they've been entrusted with. You know who wasn't there for the glorious wins in 96 or 2005 or those heartbreaking losses in 88 or 89? Lincoln Riley, Jen Cohen, and Chad Bowden. They weren't there in those games, and it shows. Some USC fans are willing to go along. We want to win national championships, they say. Yes, so do I. But national titles are rare even for the bluest of blue blood. Now listen to this. Michigan has 2 national titles in the last 75 years. They went 49 years between titles and then another 26 after that. Ohio State has 3 in the last 53 years, and they went 32 years between titles. Oklahoma has 2 in the last 50, none in the last 23. Texas has 1 national title in the last 54 years. Notre Dame hasn't won one in 35 years. USC has 2 in the last 45 years. Alabama had a string with Saban. Saban and Bear Bryant are the 2 most successful coaches of all time in terms of national titles. But if you go to the 30 years between Bryant and Saban, they won 1. In fact, you go to 81 years of Alabama football outside of those 2 coaches, they have 1 title. Those are your best programs of all time. You do not blow up a critical part of your tradition because it might be a slight help in achieving something that even the very best programs only do once every 15 years or so on average. But that's not really what USC is doing. This isn't about national titles. It's not about the college football playoff. As we talked about earlier, the Big Ten will soon have 3 or 4 automatic berths in an expanded college football playoff, and non-conference games likely won't be factored in. And even if they are factored in, you don't blow up one of the best traditions in college football so you can sometimes sneak into the 4th place spot in your conference more often. Is that what USC's become, trying to rig the schedule so we can be 4th in our conference? How would John McKay or Pete Carroll have felt about that? If playing Missouri State instead of Notre Dame gets us fourth and we get the fourth Big Ten playoff bid, should we celebrate? Get t-shirts made? Hold a ticker tape parade? That's not what's happening. USC's not thinking about dropping Notre Dame to win national championships. They're not thinking about it so they can sneak into fourth place in the conference. They're dropping it because, or thinking about it, because because USC's had trouble beating a lot of teams lately, Notre Dame and a lot of other people. And coaches who make $12 million a year aren't supposed to lose 5 or 6 games a year. So USC's looking to fill up its schedule with as many powder puff teams to get as many automatic W's as possible. And then they're going to hope we didn't notice that 3 of those 10 wins were against Missouri State and Clay Helton and San Jose State and whoever else. And maybe we won't notice because the Coliseum will be a third full. I can't imagine Pete Carroll or John McKay dropping the Notre Dame rivalry for San Jose State or Missouri State so they can more easily get to 9-3 and a number 14 seed in the playoffs. Is that what USC is all about now? Anytime, anywhere, anybody? That's what we used to say. I guess we don't say it now. Some of those past schedules are a lot harder than what USC faces now. Remember, UCLA used to be a top 20 program. They've basically quit since then. They're off recruiting against Redlands and Occidental these days. If USC keeps Notre Dame, they'll play about 4 really good teams every year. You win 2 and you're in the playoff automatically. Is that too hard of a hurdle for USC? You should have to beat somebody to get in the thing, no? Lincoln Riley, Jen Cohen, and Chad Bowden want dedicated fan support. They want us to fill the stadium and fill their coffers with donations. Fine. But don't ask us to do that and then take away the things that are most important to us. Don't demand fan support and then stomp on our favorite traditions. If it's too hard to win 9 or 10 games with Notre Dame on the schedule, do your jobs better. God willing, my time supporting USC will continue well after Lincoln Riley, Jen Cohen, and Chad Bowden are gone, just as I survived Ted Toler and Larry Smith and Paul Haggett and John Robinson and Pete Carroll. The question is, what will those 3 leave behind when they're done? And what USC traditions will they have destroyed just to make their jobs a little bit easier in the meantime?
I think your points are well taken. I think that custodians is a good way of looking at everybody that coaches at USC. You're there for really a short period of time. There's a few that might make it more than the past 10 years on occasion, but for the most part, it's about keeping the program really strong. And to do that, you need really good coaches. They've done probably, and this goes for other schools as well, not as good as you would want them to do as far as hiring head coaches. I mean, between Pete Carroll and John Robinson, that's a long time. But you know what? When it gets in the head of fans and tradition and all this sort of stuff, it does matter. People want to have a good time. I was talking with a friend of mine that I went to high school with, John. His name was John, and he was talking about, you pay money to go see USC play, and then when they're going through a downer period, it's very difficult to get back in the car and drive back down to Orange County and say, boy, I had a really good time. And John would donate money and do all those sort of things because he thought he was contributing to keeping SC at a level that made it really worth doing those sort of things, those financial donations. So the big key here is, when you see, like you mentioned, Texas and Oklahoma, that was a big tradition when I was growing up. Nebraska and Oklahoma. I mean, these were titanic games. You know what? When those games get eliminated, what's to say that SC Notre Dame doesn't get eliminated? And does anybody really care except for Greg Katz and Chris Arledge and Mark Culkin and Eric McKinney? We're all different age levels here, but we understand the enjoyment, the purpose of it. That even if things aren't going well, when Notre Dame comes to the Coliseum on the last game of the year, of a particular year, and SC has not done well, it's still Notre Dame. It's still okay. We didn't do very well, and it's pretty pathetic. But boy, if we beat Notre Dame, that's going to take a lot of pain away. You have no Notre Dame there, the rivalry becomes UCLA. I think one of the great arguments always is who's SC's bigger rival, UCLA or Notre Dame? A lot of people say Notre Dame. because it's a bigger game against a bigger program, a true blue blood. And to me, I would hate to miss Notre Dame because it's a super event for college football. But I don't like the idea of playing the schools we're playing in the first two games this year. I think it's a big waste of time. I don't think that Lincoln Riley, these coaches that put in games for whatever reason to get better wins, to look good at the beginning, the fans are too sophisticated now. They know who you're playing, they know what it's worth, and they're really going to know what it's worth as they expand to 16 team playoffs. You're not going to be able to fake anybody out at the end.
All right, guys, any other thoughts on this? Anything we missed out on in our hour of complaining?
Wait a minute. What do you mean complaining?
I think, yeah, we were, and rightfully so. I was complaining the whole time.
Well,
I think your point about winning national championships and how hard that is a good one, right? I think it's like you drop Notre Dame and you're basically are you guaranteeing that you're going to go to the playoff that year? In 26, you don't play Notre Dame, and so you're saying as the coach, as the AD, as everybody involved, 100% we are going to the playoff. And if you say that and don't, then where are we here, right? I mean, I bet Alabama thought they were going to the playoff last year. Like everybody plans on it. I just that's tough to specifically say this is going to get us there. And we haven't seen a lot of reason to believe like you're going to get there right now. So I think that's a point too. It upgrades your chances by a small amount. By a small amount. If that's what you're planning.
The number 4 seed in the Big Ten is probably not going to win that national title very often, because if you've lost 2 or 3 games in conference, you're probably not good enough to run through the monsters you have to run through in the playoffs. So that's why this idea that we need to drop Notre Dame so we can sneak into one of those last playoff spots. I think, what, really? What's the point of that? If you really want USC to win national championships, you need USC to be good enough to run through a 14 playoff. Playing Notre Dame in the season doesn't freaking matter if you're that good. It just doesn't.
Again, people don't want to recognize a new trend that's starting. Eric, you put it in writing. I've talked about it multiple times. Conferences, including the SEC, are stepping into a 9-game schedule. Other conferences are leveling up their out-of-conference schedules because strength of schedule is going to be a component when you move to the 16-team playoff field. Notre Dame, as it's set up right now, they can't get higher than a 5 seed. So again, USC is trying to go the opposite direction that everybody else is going, and then blaming the reason USC doesn't make the playoffs or going far in the playoffs because they have to play Notre Dame and a 9-game conference schedule. Go look at Notre Dame's schedule this year. Go look at the 10 games they already have on schedule for 2026. They're not playing chop liver. Alabama's leveling up. I mean, I mentioned it, I think, in the first segment. Teams are starting to play each other now. Georgia, Notre Dame, Miami, Notre Dame, Alabama, Notre Dame, Michigan, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Alabama. Meanwhile, USC, we need to take a step back. We did that with the Ole Miss series. That's not a good look. It looks like it's turning out to be true that USC wanted out of that LSU game. Not a good look. And you do that on top of going 1-6 over your last 7 versus Notre Dame. Where's the feather? Where's the
I don't. The Big Ten schedule is not easy. The travel is absolutely something that needs to be looked at and figured out. And how can USC do the best to work through that? That is for sure. Going to Indiana twice this year, not fun. Plus Illinois, like not great. But the idea that the Big Ten is going to slap road games at Ohio State, at Penn State, at Michigan, or like all in the same year. What we've seen, looking at we saw how last year's schedule played out with travel. We see how this year's schedule played out with travel, plus the teams on it. We know the teams on the schedule in 26, 27, 28. The Big Ten, like USC is swinging the hammer a little bit in very clearly like make it easier on us, right? Don't, and maybe not make it easier, but like don't give us that. They had the trip to Washington was the only trip late last year and didn't have to leave the West Coast. It's the same thing this year with Oregon. They don't have to leave the West Coast late. Uh, they're not like the way it works out this year with travel, you get some breaks. There's not a ton of back to back or out there back like you get soft pillows of a Northwestern home game after some travel. Like they are not overloading the schedule in terms of what it looks like next year. It looks like when you look at kind of the schedules that's put out over those 5 years, Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, all in the schedule next year. Not easy. Two of them are at home. And what we're talking about, if the playoff expands and how it looks for USC, you don't have to win all those games. You don't have to win them all. Don't get blown out, and like Alabama this last year, don't lose to the Vanderbilt on your schedule, right? Like those are the things. Play the tough team stuff. Ohio State last year, 2 regular season losses. Michigan tough, Oregon tough. That's a team that then wins a national championship. Like, be that team. Be that team.
They lost in conference and still won the national championship.
Yeah, I think the travel is overrated. Look, if you're flying to the Bay Area from LA, it's a 1 hour flight instead of say a 3 hour flight if you're going to, or 3.5 hour flight. But once you factor in, by the time these guys they show up at the athletic facility, they get their stuff, they get on a bus, they go to the airport, they get on a plane, they get on another bus, they go to the hotel. Even if you're going to the Bay Area, you're talking about a significant amount of travel in light of all that. So maybe your travel goes from 4.5 hours to 6.5. Whatever. It doesn't matter. I live in Dallas. I work in LA. I do that flight halfway across the country all the time, and I'm an old man. It's fun. These kids survive it.
I think it's
they're getting paid 6 figures.
What I think is the body clock thing more than the time of travel, right? It's the time zones I think that you have to figure out, and they have to figure it out. They have to figure it out. I mean, I get that, people want to lump in like USC blew up the Pac-12, and yeah, sure, but there's a necessary evil and then a just because we want to do this. And I think that's the difference in these. Like you couldn't, if you want to compete nationally, and USC played a role in it, everybody out here played a role in it. Like you couldn't do that. You couldn't move forward in the Pac-12. You had to figure this out. And the schedule now, the travel is a byproduct of that. This feels like a step where it's we can, so we will, and I don't know what the benefits are.
Yeah, the 2 hour time difference makes a difference in your sleep. When I go out to the West Coast, as I do all the time, I'll wake up a little earlier than I would if I'm here. It's fine. These kids are young. They're fine. I'm sure a lot of these guys have a lot of nights where they don't get a ton of sleep for all kinds of other reasons. It's just not that big a deal. It's just not. West Coast teams should not have to play a noon start at Rutgers. I agree. Rutgers should not have to play a 7:30 p.m. start in LA. I agree on that. That's easily fixable. And USC and Notre Dame can set their own game times if they really wanted to. So, all right. That's probably enough of that. But frankly, I think most of it needed to be said. And USC fans, if you care about this, you probably should contact the athletic department and let them know you care. Because if you don't, they're going to do this to you. That's the reality. This is what they want to do. It's what they want to do. Guys, any recruiting news over the last week? I don't think there's been much in the way. I mean, there are some rumors of offensive linemen that USC, I thought, felt pretty good about, maybe are no longer pursuing or they're no longer interested. There's a rumor of a linebacker in Hawaii who seems to be very excited about USC. I think everybody expects that he will make the move at some point. Anything else going on that's worth talking about?
I think right now, right, Talanoa Ely is a linebacker. He's a guy you have to get. You talk about like must get recruits in classes, and there's one must get guy in any recruiting class for any program. Like there's always almost always other options that you can go out and get. Ely's a guy that means a whole lot. Position, played, where he's from, connection, all of that kind of stuff. Like he means a lot. To lose him to a school that would get him, right? Which USC's probably going to play at some point in the near future, wherever, if he goes anywhere else. That would be big. So he's a guy that you definitely want to watch. Right? You're curious about, is anybody committing soon? You had the Xavier Griffin blow up, and you know that schools everywhere are using that. They're going to use anything they can, and at this point, there's a lot of it is money, right? A lot of it is NIL negotiation, contract, whatever. But you're still going to find the old negative recruiting tactics wherever you can, and so you know that guys are hearing a lot with that. I think right now it's, what does USC do in June with these official visits? Who comes? And what kind of an impact can you make there? Because it feels like the class is filling up, and then you look and there's still a bunch of targets out there. So I think June is going to be kind of a place where we can see some movement.
Yeah, maybe we'll push to next week. The other minor things we're going to talk about. We spent enough. It feels anticlimactic to talk about Big Ten stadiums after what we've been doing. Okay, well, listen, SC fans, I hope you appreciate what we're talking about today. It means a lot to a lot of us, and not just us. I mean, I suspect if you asked Marcus Allen or Ronnie Lott or some of the greats that have worn Cardinal gold what they think about this, and they were willing to tell you the truth, they would say we should be playing Notre Dame. So it's something they look forward to every year when they were around, and I suspect something they still look forward to watching now. So hopefully we'll hold on to it. I guess we'll find out. Until next week, guys, we'll see what happens between now and next week. Maybe we'll get another commit. Maybe we'll be able to talk about something fun. If not, we'll talk about something that's not fun. We'll see you next week regardless. Until then, fight on, everybody.